to start off, I was thinking about my Pardes experience, because they asked me to think about that and speak about that for a few minutes tonight. And although Pardes had a deep impact on so much of my life, I actually think that it's not so unique. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why. So like many Pardes students, I didn't grow up observant, and I grew up with one Jewish parent. My mom grew up culturally Jewish, and my dad wasn't Jewish, and we went to synagogue maybe twice a year for most of my Jewish life. And actually at Pardes, I found that wasn't so unique. Like many of you, Pardes was the first time that I was invited into a Beit Midrash to study texts in the original, and my voice was not only valued, but encouraged and brought out for the first time. Pardes was the first time I was in a truly pluralistic environment with people not only from different ages, but from all over the country, the United States, and all over the world. And every single person was there to learn of their own volition. Every single person had spent time and money and energy and a high opportunity cost to be in the room. Pardes was definitely the first time I understood what the Talmud was. You know, in my education growing up, I heard of the Torah and I thought of the 5 books of Moses, and I heard of this thing, the oral law, and I never knew what that was. And Pardes was this moment of realizing, wow, the Talmud is kind of like the Judaism we live today. Everything that we experience and know is rooted in this huge volume of people that have compiled over many years. And it was by far the first time that I ever saw powerful women teaching and owning and sharing that. And that was very impactful. But also, again, not so unique. Like many of you, even if you were there for just a summer or for a few weeks in the executive program, or if you were there over a year, it was the first time in my life that I got to live and experience Jerusalem and its magic full time, and just be there and cherish like the craziness of Jerusalem and the excitement. And yes, I was one of, I feel very lucky, like someone else in the room, I got to meet my husband, who at the time was a hippie, and I had no idea he was going to become a modern Orthodox rabbi. It was a turn of events on the road trip of life. But I got to meet my husband, and we always say we grew in Torah together. Like, that's how our relationship blossomed. Was the first thing we did was study Bereshit. It actually was. And since then, I won't speak about my work so much now because it's actually not what I think connects us the most, but since then we've started a project called BASE, which is a growing movement of young pluralistic rabbis and their partners building Jewish communities all over the United States. We started here in New York, now there's 9 bases nationally, and I'm happy to share more about that. But that really grew out of, in large part, meeting him at Pardes and the environment that we got to enjoy. But as many of you know, and we get to see from the newsletters, meeting your spouse at Pardes, again, not so unique. So I kept thinking, so what is unique here? And then I thought about what it was like to come home after this immersive experience in Israel. And what was interesting there, and I was telling John this, was when I came home, and I think probably many of you found this, so many people, when I walked into a room and said, I've been to Pardes, I feel like I got a stamp of approval. I feel like I gained a whole new set of credentials in Jewish spaces that I never had. People treated me with enthusiasm and respect and a sense of belonging that I never felt, because I think going to Pardes really, really stands for something. So that, again, I hope and I imagine for many of you is not so unique, that Pardes opened up a lot of doors, not only institutionally, but people, and a sense of the knowledge that you bring with it. So over the last few days, as I've thought about this event and what it means to have an alumni tour and to do visioning together about the future of Pardes, I tried to articulate what exactly are the values that embody our collective experience. Even though we span, as we saw earlier, many different decades and many different experiences, what is that core? What is the neshama, so to speak, of the Pardes experience? So then I asked myself also, how might we use this understanding of what is that core collective experience to strengthen the future of Pardes and to help others enjoy the experience that we have all been privileged to have? So the first value that I really articulated, and I think many of you said it in different ways, was inclusivity and diversity. So let's just remember how beautiful it is in this day and age that men and women and people who proudly can identify as non-binary sit together over the same ancient texts written and compiled by a very homogenous group of men hundreds of years ago with a sense of compassion and critique and nuance. It's rare that a 23-year-old could have the opportunity, like I did, to have a daily chavruta with a 50 or 8-year-old. And their life experiences and their opinions are equally valued and exchanged. It's profound to see an atheist and an observant Jew have the same amount of passion in their resonance and dissonance in their tradition, even though their opinions might be wildly different. To be in a space that encourages alternate opinions and approaches, but above all, values genuine curiosity towards the other, is a rare gift in our society. In the exploration of the boundaries of what we know and what and who we've experienced, I think the Pardes Magic begins. And so to this end, I think a few questions arise for us as the alumni community. The first, how can we help Pardes include an even more diverse set of voices and life experiences and backgrounds into the community and into the Beit Midrash? I think we have the power to do that. And to what extent do we, as individuals or as community leaders or as teachers or as family members, emulate this radical model of inclusivity in our own lives and our friend groups and our work? The second value that I sat down and reflected on, which again I think many of you touched upon, was an intellectual rigor and integrity, maybe an authenticity, someone said. So if you think about it, Pardes has a particularly challenging job. They have to present ancient texts to a wide variety of people in a way that is both intellectually honest and historically placed, and simultaneously in a way that enlivens our Jewish life and practice, giving it personal meaning and purpose. And I don't know many, if truly any other institutions that do it with the warmth and the integrity and the open-mindedness of the Pardes faculty. The cornerstone of the Pardes educational model, the chavruta, is a symbolic representation of this value. The chavruta experience helps us understand ourselves in our own stories, our lives and our relationships, and the impact that these circumstances have had on where we are today and what we believe and what we bring into the room. The whole premise of the chavruta reminds us that there is no one truth or interpretation. There are only many perspectives. Again, I think in our world today, this perspective is important not only in religious spaces, but in all spaces that we come to. And this honest approach to texts and our relationship to them brings me to my next two questions. How might we help Pardes highlight the power of chavruta and that experience in shaping more intellectually rigorous and honest environments and personal relationships? And how might we find new life, text, and work chavrutas utilizing this Pardes alumni network? I think one thing I've really taken from my Pardes experience is that chavruta is much more broadly defined than sitting over an ancient text. Chavruta is the meeting of two souls who find that each one has something to teach. And I think in this room, we all have so many life experiences beyond the knowledge that we have that we should be exploring and sharing. And if you think about how many Pardes alumni live all over the world, that network is truly incredible. And how can we utilize that even more? So the final value that I really thought of, community. So obviously, every single Jewish organization rightly states that one of their goals is building community. So this is obviously not what makes Pardes unique. What makes Pardes unique is the way in which community is formed, through the integration of Jewish learning and Jewish living. Community meals, a day of service, group trips on the weekend, Shabbat meals at our teachers' homes. This is where the value of community becomes actualized and inspiring. Pardes understands that learning for one's own knowledge acquisition is admirable and it's important, but it is completely insufficient. Our learning only becomes internalized when we share our learning in community and we express our understanding in action. In fact, these ideas have had a profound impact on our ideation of BASE, to the extent that the pillars of our work, hospitality and Jewish learning and service, are a direct response to the need and the understanding to integrate our learning with our life. I'm also learning in our work that to continue to thrive as a community, to truly be in deep relationship with one another, we must be accountable to one another. Which leads me to my last and perhaps most challenging questions, which I hope we can explore tonight. To what extent do we, the Pardes Alumni Network, truly feel in community with one another? How might we create stronger bonds of Jewish learning and Jewish living and service? And what are aspirational ways that we would want to be connected to one another in this room? And where do we feel that there needs to be accountability if we take on those commitments? These are not easy questions, and I hope that tonight we can explore them. I will just conclude by reminding us that first and foremost, Pardes is a community of choice. Pardes is not for the passive observer. Every single person who enters the Beit Midrash, every single person in this room spent time and money and energy choosing to be there. Every single person was there to learn, to grow, and ultimately to transform. So as we vision towards this institution's future, that I think we all clearly feel deeply a part of, we again must become active participants. We must deeply consider the values that each of us wrote down on these cards. Each of us feel like deeply connected for some values that are core to us and that this space and this community represents. So the question is, how do we enliven these values in both the Beit Midrash in Jerusalem, but also in this network and in our own lives abroad? Thank you.